What's up?
Not much. Just getting ready to coach you up. Let's help you become a badass at this game. So,
Yeah.
let me.
Cool.
I take it from the name, your ID, Colossi, that you're a Protoss player. Is that correct?
No, no,
Oh shit.
I don't know. It was just like random, totally random name. I usually play random, actually.
Okay. Actually, you'd be the first random player I've ever coached then if you're actually random.
Well, I mean, that's what I play the most of because if I play any one race, I just get bored after like 4 or 5 games and start playing bad. But
Sure.
I feel like random, it's like kind of a fresh feel to every game.
Okay. That makes sense.
So
Well, what's your kind of if you had to categorize your playstyle, what would you kind of categorize it at as? Like, are you aggressive or defensive or greedy, or what do you think you play
pretty
like?
aggressive. I,
Okay.
heavy micro.
So
Uh,
you're the random player that goes for 12 pulls and proxy 4
no,
axes?
no, no, not like that aggressive. But like, I like to do like 3 racks, uh, with tank and medevacs, uh, and like barracks expand and then build 2 more barracks, tank and medevac, and then when my first 2 medevacs come out, whatever bio I have, I'll send it across and like begin my harass, and then just kind of macro and micro at the same time. Try to
Okay,
probably do it poorly.
sure. What league are you in the moment?
I'm Diamond 2,
Okay.
rank 12.
Okay, so um, I feel like something like just the way you're kind of describing things. I feel like probably the best way, you're gonna probably have the most out of what you want is you sound like to me you sound like the idea of like a two base player essentially, where like you can maybe go for like a harass with a fast expand, and then you
Well,
just
since I've been watching I'm sorry, I
no
don't mean to
worries.
interrupt.
No, you're totally fine. I don't mind.
Since I've been watching your Bronze to GM, I've been like heavy, heavy with the macro.
Sure.
Like I still harass, and sometimes it'll mess my macro up, but I've been checking my worker count, trying to get to 80 workers every game, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So,
Would you prefer to go down that road instead then?
um, I mean, I guess I don't know. I
Because
This was a birthday present for
yeah,
me,
yeah, no
so
worries, no
I
worries.
wasn't
I get it.
planning.
Yeah,
If
no,
I was
I
the highest I've ever been ranked is like 4K,
sure.
I want to say.
Yeah, yeah.
And right now I'm ranked like 3,200. So I quit playing for
No worries.
a long amount of time.
Well, I'll just say, let me just explain it, and this might help you make a decision. First of all, happy birthday, man, or belated birthday. I don't know when it
I
was, but
appreciate it. It was yesterday.
nice. Well, happy belated. Uh, so I would say this: if you want to play macro, there is so much more you have to learn. Like for every matchup, and if you're playing 9 matchups because you're playing all 3 races, that's a lot to undertake. I'm gonna tell you right now that is like a massive mountain to climb right there. Uh, so like that is just I just want you to be aware of that essentially before you
Okay.
decide to make your choice. Because the longer the game goes, the more you have to know about it, and if you have to know every matchup that's like that exists in this game, that's a lot. And then
Right.
if you play aggressive, that's going to be a little bit more mainline for you. Like, and the reason why that is because if you play a macro game, generally speaking, you react to what your opponent does. So you need to know all the ins and outs of all the stages of the game for all matchups, which that's why it's such an massive thing to undertake for you.
Uh-huh.
But if you play aggressive, you actually make your opponent react to your gameplay. So they have to now play your game rather than you play their game, essentially.
Right.
So that's why I was saying if you want to play random and you want to have like results, like good results, and like you want to have a decent win rate, essentially, that's sooner than later. That's not going to take you years to master. Uh,
Right.
that being an aggressive player might be up, and you even said yourself you tend to play more aggressive, which I mean I feel like that's been the right choice for you already if you're going to play random.
Right.
It's just going to give you better, a better game on average.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly notice it's a lot easier to play a macro game when their first attack fails, and you're
100%, yeah.
like, okay, I can just macro.
Yep. No, but like 100%. But like the higher you, if you actually go up a bit in MMR, the higher you get, the more you have to have perfect responses to. If someone's playing aggressive to you and you're playing macro, so you have less army than they do, if you don't have a
uh,
perfect response, you just die.
right. Yeah, and I've definitely experienced the hey, you're just dead. I
Yeah,
mean, I've
exactly.
certainly experienced the they're
Sure.
dead because I killed them,
So
as well.
I would ask you now this to give us kind of a plan as to how we want to go about going from here, and that would be if you have any matchup specifically you want to focus on, like let's say you really want to focus on like as Protoss against Zerg or like as Terran against Terran or something like that.
Right.
And then also secondly behind that, if you have like any, I don't know if if you didn't do this, it's totally fine. But if you did save any replays that you wanted us to look at, that's also something we could take a look at in like a matchup you wanted to go over or something like that. So
Well, I have a couple of replays
sure,
just in case,
that's
you
fine.
know, just in case you wanted to go over replays.
It
I have a
it's
couple.
it's one of the things that I would say it's gonna give me an idea of how you play the game, and we don't have to look at it. It's I would say it's a good
Well,
tool to use if you're indecisive about what you want
I'm
to do.
also willing to just play a couple of games with you if
That's fine
you.
with me too. I mean, I don't. I'm down for anything. I'm just trying. All I want to do when I'm with what I'm explaining is I want to make sure you're getting something that you're actually interested in, and you're not like, well, this whatever. You're like, oh yeah, this sounds good.
Right. Well, I love this game.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So and I've watched you back, you know, before Cat stopped streaming
I'm your
18
second
million
choice.
times.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh,
I'm just
I
joking,
don't
dude.
know. I mean, I was always a huge Zerg fan.
Yeah, sure, sure. Nice,
Uh, so you, Cats, and Destiny were always like I was
nice.
constantly watching y'all streams, and then eventually I guess Terran won out, and I started watching Bunny, something Bunny.
Yeah, the Korean dude.
No,
Or no,
no,
the Team Luca guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
there's two
black guy.
bunnies, or I think there was at least.
And
Uh,
then him, and then Up a Tree Zelda. I've actually played some games against some streamers. You'll be like watching a stream in the background and playing, and then it's like, oh crap, I'm playing
yeah,
Maximus Black, and
yeah.
Masters 1, and I'm Diamond, like high Diamond.
That's cool. It's always
Yeah.
fun. It's always fun as well. You can
So
always like go back and watch the VOD and see their perspective while you played them and shit.
right, right.
Um, but
Got
yeah,
to turn the stream off real quick.
yeah. But I guess I mean if you want, we probably the easiest way we can do this is I can just kind of give you. I think this is what we should do, honestly.
Okay.
For like time management for you.
Right.
You you and I can play a 1v1, and you can give me an idea of
What I struggle against,
well,
maybe.
no, like what I would say more like what units you like to use in that matchup. Like, give me
Okay.
if you're like I like let's just hypothetically say you get Protoss, I get Zerg, and you're like I love
Yeah.
Stalker
No, that's
Colossus.
cool.
I can give you a rundown of a
So
build, an idea how to like make that work better for you, and how to like set up some type of an attack and make you understand like what you're going for.
okay.
Uh,
So what would the matchup be?
well, do you want to play random or do you want to pick something specifically?
Um. Yeah. I mean, if I was gonna pick a race, it'd be Terran
Okay.
probably to play because I feel like that's what I have the most success with. I mean, obviously, Protoss and Terran, it's pretty close, and Zerg is just a lot to do. I
Sure.
can't do it all.
So if you're gonna play Terran, would you classify yourself as more of a mech or a bio player?
Bio for sure, 100%.
Okay. So if you want to build that is just kind of streamlined in all matchups, and it's something that is easier to not die with, and then it's something that can go
Yes.
into bio, I would let's do this really quick. Hop on StarCraft 2 if you're not on already, and I'll give you an example build of just something that's universally good in all matchups, and then you can use it in against me, and I'll play whatever race, and then you can try it out against me and see how you do, and then we can go over your replay and see if you're like doing it right or wrong, essentially.
Okay.
I think that's
Cool.
gonna give you like the best. But it's I would say it's a build that If you really want to fine tune it, you can definitely fine tune it in matchups. But if you want to just keep it as simple as saying, I want to use this against everything, you totally can because it has reasons why it's good.
And I don't know any build orders. That's one thing that I got all the way up to Diamond playing random with no build orders.
Yeah,
Just
I mean,
like
you don't have to know them, honestly. I think that's fine.
winging it.
Uh,
So,
it's just understanding game concept is all you got to understand to get to Diamond League.
of
You got to, like,
course.
have decent macro, have, you know, things like that. All right, so are you on right now?
I am.
Okay, so in top right, just go ahead and left click your avatar portrait, which will load up your profile. And then in the middle left, do you see a button that says ladders?
Yes.
Click that twice. So you're going to click ladders and Grandmaster. And then scroll down to rank 175 at the moment, and or 174. And then you can just right click my name and send me a message.
So cool.
Yeah. Thanks, man. That's probably the fastest way on this system to get people to message you.
Vibe.
You
174. And then
just right.
chat.
Yep, exactly. And then I'll invite you to a game after that. Nice. Okay, so invite to party. And then I will make a game. And this time, I'll run you through the build really fast. This will be very quick. It won't be very long. And then I'll have you play me right after this, okay? So this is the moment where I would say ask me as many questions as you can about whatever's going on, if you have any. And even if I'm like mid-sentence and you interrupt me, I encourage you to do that. Because I want you to actually, you know, not forget your point. Definitely ask me whatever you want to ask whenever it comes up in your mind. And otherwise, I'll just show you the build and give you a quick rundown on how it goes.
Sounds good.
So basically what this is going to be is it's going to be a 1-1-1 with a expansion, and then you're going to go into the possibility of a Cyclone or a tank with a Raven, and then you're just going to turn this into Marine Medevac, and then it's optional if you want to continue to use tanks from that point on.
Oh, yeah.
So it really depends on if you would just want to do that or not.
Okay.
But you could, like, for instance, like, you could go 1-1-1 into, like, Marine Marauder Medevac. You could go 1-1-1 into Marine Tank Medevac. Things like that, essentially. Like, you don't have to always play tank if you don't want to. Like, for instance, against Protoss, I would say maybe better to go Marauder. And against Zerg, maybe better to go tank. And Terran, maybe better to go tank.
Funny, I've been just massive Marauders in, like, every single game.
Yeah, how's that going?
Against everybody.
Is it working for you?
I mean, unless they go straight air,
Sure.
you know, and then I'll get, like, you know, then I'll just start building Marines out of my barracks one at a time.
Yeah, right. Alright, so we'll have you, this SCV right here can be your scout boy, SCV 17, and this way, you could scout later against Protoss and also against Zerg, but if you play against a Terran player, you kind of need to scout around now. So if you just want to make it a standard scout, where you leave your base at like 17, it's totally fine.
Okay.
It works in all matchups. And then after this, we're going to be going into a Reaper and an expansion, and we will not take our second gas until our factory starts. And we're going to just generate enough gas to make our factory with 1 gas. So this allows us to expand and stuff like that. Okay, so we can see it's a Terran player. You scout, and you're like, all right, cool. I guess I see what's going on. Whatever, you know, just get information as to like what he's opening like, and if he expands, the second you see that, you already know kind of what it is. And then make your second depot and a Marine.
I love how unbothered the AI is. It's just like, yeah, I'm gonna expand no barracks.
Yeah, right. Doesn't give a shit.
Moisturized in my lane.
Yep. And then you can go for a factory behind this. And when you take your factory, this is when you, like I said, this is when you take your second gas. And now, as soon as your factory is started, ideally you're making it on time, right? And behind that, you should be able to start a reactor on your racks with 1 Marine out too. So you can poke around with your Reaper, do whatever you can. You know, try to harass, try to scout, do whatever you can with the Reaper while not messing up your macro. So don't forget to do things like fill your gas up as soon as it's ready to go, stuff like that while you're doing this. and then the second your factory is done, immediate starport. So, and this is why the second gas kicks on right now, about now, and you're gonna actually be able to afford that. So,
Do you use your okay, well that answers my question right there.
the factory.
You build a tech lab. You don't
Yeah, immediate tech lab. And then if you're, like I said, if you're against Terran or Zerg, I would recommend making a tank. If you're against Protoss, or sorry, if you're, yeah, no, I said that right. If you're against Terran or Zerg, I recommend making a tank. And if you're against Protoss, you can make a Cyclone. And then you can go into Marine Marauder if you want to behind that. And if you're against Terran, you can go Marine Tank. Or if you're against Zerg, go Marine Tank. So it's Marine Tank in both matchups except for Protoss. Against Protoss, you could go Cyclone first into Marauders. It's like a safe way to open up essentially, because it gives you against Terran 2 you could even open up Cyclone first, to be fair, because you can deal with Banshees. But I should have just made a fucking Cyclone. It's okay. Whatever. We'll just say this. We'll say this to make this less confusing. Make a Cyclone, regardless, and then if it's Zerg, start making tanks afterwards. If it's Terran, start making tanks afterwards, and if it's Protoss, you can just either make tanks or not use it at all. It's a safe option essentially. It helps a lot at dealing with people who are aggressive.
And this is to deal with early harass.
Yes.
This is a defensive style.
Yeah, it's the opener so far was defensive, but it becomes aggressive really fast right after. Because what we're doing now is we're gonna go 4 racks with this, and we're gonna make an engineering bay with this. And now suddenly we're going to turn on the aggression like crazy with the 2-base parade push for the rest of the game. So that's why I was saying like this, like
you can just keep macroing right behind.
Yeah, no, you can literally just rally all your stuff to his base and just like make units constantly while pressuring nonstop. And now you can swap over your barracks and your starport once your Raven pops out, and you can start stim pack.
Okay.
Get weapon upgrade on your engineering bay as well. We took our gases at our natural when it was almost fully saturated. And now let's go ahead and throw down all
so
of...
you end up with 5 barracks?
Yeah, 5 barracks. It's 1-1-1 into 4 racks. And now behind this, we're taking all of our reactors on all our racks, because now we also have 4 gases set up here. So we have tons of economy going. And now, yeah, we're just gonna start going into medevac, marine, tank in this particular game. So we're making our.
So you don't start shield.
You start Stimpack first every time.
Right, no, but you don't start the shield until after Stimpack is already finished.
If you start shield right now, it just ties up your gas like crazy, and you can't afford medevacs properly.
I do every single game.
Yeah, try to get better at managing it with time, and going back and remembering to start it when it's ready to be started, and not tying up your resources before you can afford it, because all that's going to do is severely hinder your tank count or your medevac count, because your gas is so cut thin here, as it is.
My setup is a lot different from this. I'm like reactor on 1 barracks and then 2 barracks with.
That's Marauder focused. If you go double tech lab, that's Marauder. You have to go Marauder if you do that. And that is good against Protoss, but not good against, honestly, Terran or Zerg, I would say.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean,
and then now,
usually,
or good.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, now when you move out like this, I just got Stimpack, so that's the time to move out. So now I can also pair that with a combat shield. I can now rally my racks to my opponent's base. I can now also play a game with all my tanks that I'm gonna keep producing, and I already have, where I can set it up like this. I can be like, all right, I'm right here, and I'm gonna start going in, and I'm gonna, you know, pressure my opponent by setting up a tank line, and then going for it, going fucking ham here, like, you know, just kind of like this right here. Like you move in, get the push going, and you just constantly, you're just here now as well. Like you can see like my units coming out of my base are just literally walking to his base every single time they spawn. This is just a parade push, and it's a very aggressive way to play, but you'll gain a ton of control if you play this way. And then if you ever manage to have a lot of money here right now, and you're like, oh shit, he's not dead yet, and I also have like 400 plus minerals and all my barracks are in production, take a 3rd base. This is when you can take a 3rd base while maintaining aggressive play. and then you just go fucking ham, and you just keep the pressure on. You literally keep piling it on nonstop until something happens, essentially, whether one of you dies or ideally your opponent dies, right?
Right.
Just do it till you die.
Yeah. God, I mean, honestly, this army at 6 minutes, it looks way bigger than what I'm pushing with, usually around the same time.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what is classified as like a 2-base all-in, because this is basically like as strong as it's about as strong of an army as you're gonna get numbers-wise at 2-base setup, because you're maximizing all of your money to go into just flat-out units, and you're cutting SCVs once you're fully saturated on 2 bases. Aside from maybe having like 1 or 2 extra SCVs so you can continue depot production without having undersaturated inner lines. So we're stopping SCV count usually like around, like you see I have like 46. Anywhere around like 45, 46, that's great. Because it's 22 SCVs per base, so you're really having 44 mining. And then if you have 1 or 2 extra SCVs just for constant depot production, you're good to go. So
Awesome.
does that feel like it made sense?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting your setup to look so much different than my 5 barracks. I usually end up with like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 barracks, and they all have reactors on them.
Sure.
Tech labs, rather.
You could definitely go into more racks later. It's just that if you're going to stay on 2 base and actually do a timing on 2 base, 5 racks plus a starport plus a factory is going to tap your economy like about as hard as it can be. Like you're not going to be able to afford more than that, really.
Right.
The only way you'll really have money pile up is if you actually go into if you're like, wait, well, I have like 2,000 minerals or like 1,200 minerals right now. If you go but if you go back in the replay, you'll notice you're like, oh, well, I just missed like 10 seconds there on a round of units, and I just missed like another 11 seconds there on a round of units. It's like you're missing your macro essentially. So if that happens to you and you're like, well, I tend to miss my macro sometimes.
It happens to me bad on Zerg, but really nowhere else.
I would.
And the trick.
Or go ahead, sorry.
The trick that you were telling about emptying out all your queen's energy onto the nest.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, trying to hit it perfect every time, just
queuing them up and stuff.
That's been huge for late game.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't get into the really high tier units if I'm playing Zerg. It's usually just who can mass more Roach Hydra or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So having all that extra,
it makes sense. I would say the biggest thing to practice is you just gotta start. Like if you struggle with late game macro, it really just comes down to the fact that you need to be able to identify moments in the fight that are going to be things you can't change.
Nothing are going to happen.
Yeah,
right.
You're just there, and you're like, well, I'm just kind of watching this now. But you can still watch it, but you need to also take a moment to hit your hotkey and look at your macro in the bottom middle of the screen where your actual production card is, and then do a quick macro cycle, and then go back to using your units once you can actually do something with them. Because a lot of people just kind of tunnel vision the fight, and they just stare at it even though they can't do anything, and they just don't macro. That's the biggest like no of macro and higher levels of play, because you fall behind so hard if you do that.
Right. So should I grab some one of these replays or
so what you can
play more?
This is what I was going to recommend to you. And feel even during the game when we're playing it, feel free to ask me how the build works. But I was going to have you recreate the build I just showed you.
Right.
And then you can also, like, I would say definitely before this coaching lesson's over, go back and save the replay I just gave you. That way you can use it as a reference in the future. And you can always have, if you want to just use the replay itself instead of watching this VOD, you can do that, and it's much faster. Obviously, I'm going to send you this VOD as well when this is over. So you can always, everything we talk about, you can always re-listen to it and get brush-ups on what we talk about. So it's not going to be too confusing. So I would say try your best to execute it. And yeah, if you, at any point in time, even if you ask me 20 questions, I don't mind. Ask me at any stage of the build if you're confused, and I'll remind you as to how it goes.
Sounds good to me, man.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go random, and the build for you doesn't change, by the way, but I'll tell you what race I get. and then you can do
I'm
whatever.
trying to do 4 racks with the cyclone and a raven.
So it's 1-1-1. Make a Raven and a Cyclone first, and then turn it into 4 more racks after that with an Engineering
Right.
Bay for +1 weapons.
Right. Is it eBay and then 3 rack?
Four
more
racks and then eBay. All right, so I got Protoss, and I would say just for the sake of making the build feel more streamlined for you, just go Tank Marine just for this game and just see how it feels.
Okay, so don't do the
Don't do Marauder.
Cyclone.
Oh no, you can go Cyclone, but I'm saying don't do the Marauder thing we talked about because it's just I didn't even show you that yet, so it's gonna probably be confusing.
Oh yeah. No worries. So in this build, is it gas before barracks?
No, gas after barracks. Like gas right after you take a gas right after.
Right. Right.
And don't forget to scout with SCV 17. Just so you can have a read as to what's going on.
So and now do I build my second gas?
You build just in gas when you have 100 gas after you make a Marine. So you make Reaper Marine, and when you have 100 gas, you start factory plus second gas at the same time.
Oh, I see. But
And then when your gas is done, saturate it fully immediately.
okay.
Enemy assaulting probes. I am here.
And then remember to, if you need to scout more, just try to get more vision as you go through the base. Like with the Reaper again. Like so you can get more reads on like tech and stuff like that. But that's again, that's optional. That's like when you have a moment to spare. It'll definitely make the build feel harder if you do that more.
So do I build my barracks around now?
You build all 4 racks after you make the Raven and the Cyclone.
After you make the raven?
And then pair that with an Engineering Bay.
Right.
Nice.
Research completed.
This up a little bit.
I am here in the shadows. I am here in the shadows.
And then once your stim pack is like 90% of the way done, that's when you can really move out. Do not move out before that though, because if you get caught by anyone at any race in the middle of the map and they have their mobility upgrade and you don't have yours, you're probably gonna die.
Sorry. I was gonna say, when do I take my natural gas?
You take your natural gases when you're like 14 SCVs on the middle line.
Saturated?
Almost fully, that like really close to full saturation. Like 13, 14, somewhere around there is great.
I am here in the shadows.
And if I'm floating, can I go ahead and build and expand now?
So you shouldn't be doing that, only because if you expand, if you make a bunch of racks and then you just have a bunch of money open and then you expand, it kind of ruins the point of your whole timing. So like it's one of those things where you would argue that you should have just expanded in the first place without even doing a timing.
Right.
So I would say if you ever find yourself having extra money, just make like 1 or 2 more racks and just really try to make your macro as solid as you can. But if you can't, maybe make an extra like 5 racks instead of 4 when I tell you to make 4, so you can like make a little bit more units with some missed timers, if that makes sense. Like a macro racks.
I moved out and then I looked at my stim pack and I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not ready.
if it's not even close, if you move out and I catch you in the middle of the map, you're probably gonna die. Like most races will kill you.
It's close now. So.
If it's like 90%, if you can gauge it like as about 90% done, you can move out of your base and that's fine. And then make sure you set up your tanks before you take the fight, because that's definitely like scanning was good right there. Yeah.
Exhausted.
Alright, and then if this timing for you were to, let's say, fail, where it just isn't going to make the dent in the base you're looking for, and now, you know, if it goes into a reverse situation where you're starting to get pushed back across the map, this is the moment where I would say it's going to get rough, because this is just how two-base aggressive builds are designed. They kind of make the game go down to this point, but now I'm no longer playing your game. Now you're playing my game, right? Because this is the moment where it's a macro defensive thing where if you defend, you win. So what we can do, this is the best thing you can do. Okay, so I'm kind of glad this happened to you in this game, and the reason why is because now let's talk about what should you do if this happens to you, and like how can you go about it? Like, are you gonna change your build entirely, or are you gonna, you know, be like fuck StarCraft or?
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave this game and then let's go into the replay together and let's talk about why things might have struggled for you there.
Yeah. Why there was definitely some hiccups in me trying to build a little bit different, slightly different build
100%.
than what
Yeah.
I'm used to, which is obviously my bad made up build.
No, I believe it, man. Like whenever you do a build for the first time that you're not used to, it's fucking awkward. That's why I was saying you can literally ask me any question during the game, because I know it's gonna be hard to remember the whole thing. But the big thing is you just really want to make sure that your production, mineral wise, is basically always pumping. Like you never stop pumping bio almost the entire time, whether you're making a reactor or you're making marines. You will have to have moments where you can't make anything out of the factory or the starport because you'll be kind of tied up on your gas here and there, but it'll still be mostly pumping. It'll be pumping quite a bit. So we'll talk about things that might have gone wrong for you here. And so far things are great. You know, it's just the depot going down. Your SCVs are still pumping properly. Everything looks fine. Get your rack started. Now you make your gas right after. Perfect. Making your SCVs. This next SCV right now can be the scout guy if you want to get an early scout on your opponent. If you leave him to, okay, you scout with him. So just know that if you don't have to scout with this SCV, okay? You don't have to. But if you don't scout with him and you move out also with the Reaper, there's a chance you'll die to certain things in the game that, like, for instance, proxy gate will be a problem for you. Proxy racks will be a problem for you. And a Zerg player who goes for early pool and runs around the path of where a Reaper would go will be a problem for you. So this SCV scout allows you to know that if you actually move your Reaper across the map, you're not going to get fucked over by some bullshit that's just going to be at your base as you get to their base.
I used to be more hip on the, because back a year ago, it was like everyone was building either like Mass Reaper or like this like Reaper with 2 Hellions, and it was this whole little early game exchange you had to do in PvP.
You can still do that, honestly. But the thing about this build that shuts it down really well is once the Cyclone comes out, it's really hard for the Hellion. Yeah, exactly. The Cyclone just is like, no, get the fuck out of here. And then the Cyclone also shuts down a lot of other things too, like if it was a Banshee or something like that, or like an Oracle for Protoss or some shit. But here's one thing I've noticed about your build that you can definitely fix, okay? Because you're not prioritizing it fast enough. So when your barracks is done, you should pair it. This has been up to this point, it was perfect. But the SCV that has the pacing that's going to finish around the same time as your barracks finishes, you should actually stop making the second SCV behind this. Because if your depot and racks is not delayed for any reason, and if your SCV count is not delayed for any reason, you will always have your SCV number 19 finishing around the same time as your racks finishes. Like they're going to pair within a couple seconds of each other almost every single time.
Right.
So you need to immediately make an orbital command. And the reason why is because in orbital command, you want to initiate the generation of energy of mules as fast as possible. And you also want to drop a mule on your mineral line as fast as possible because it stacks with SCV mining. It doesn't actually take turns. It overlaps it. So it's it's massively important to prioritize that. So you should actually even be prioritizing it before you even expand. Like the orbital before expansion.
Right. So, and sometimes I do, and if I have, because you have to wait, you miss like a slight amount of worker building time for the CC, but I've built it that way before. I guess I didn't realize how important it was.
It's super important. Orbital definitely always priority over everything else. Just like if you ever make a command center like in your main base as well, to take like a third with it, you need to make that shit into an orbital before you lift it off and land it. Like you always need to make orbital as soon as possible, as soon as the command center is ready to do it every single time. Whenever it's going to be an orbital command center. So like right now, orbital should be starting, and then your money would drop back down to like 200. Because you'd be making a Reaper and an orbital, and then you have a few more turn-ins coming in. You'd be roughly around 200 minerals. Your SCV would run down from the barracks down to the natural, and then the fact that you're going to mine a mineral patch and then go to the command center to build it, that's perfect because your SCVs are doing nothing anyways. So you might as well give or go ahead.
And from what I'm seeing, from what you're showing me, it seems like I'm really trying to like crunch a bunch of stuff in to like when I have the exact right amount of money, because like and also having the exact right amount of money and the right amount of gas, I'm trying to build.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's like I'm trying to put a bunch of stuff, all the upgrades, get all the upgrades started.
Like if you inefficiently spend your money, your build becomes inefficient and it falls apart versus people who actually play efficient. Like it's not even like, oh, well, your build is only like 2% behind. So instead of being at 100 out of 100%, you're only at 98 out of 100%. Every inefficient thing you do, it sets the pace for everything else to be inefficient behind it the whole time. So I would say if you make like, let's just say you make like, fucking like 5 mistakes and they're all really small, but you make like 5 mistakes throughout the first 3 minutes of the game that slow your build down. At each one of them, this is probably the best way I can explain this without making this sound confusing. second number 1 in the game is more important than second number 2. Like, every second at the start of the game is more important to not make mistakes as the game progresses, and then as the game progresses into a deeper time, it's actually okay. It's more acceptable if you make a macro mistake, because it's less damaging to your overall macro, because you're already closer to the stage where you're fully set up. So if you make if you make a mistake at the first second of the game, that is worth like 3 mistakes at minute number 1 in the game, if that makes sense. Like, it's so important to not fuck up your macro early as much as possible. And then the more that you do, the more mistakes that you make, your build ends up being things like where if your opponent's got a build and it's like at 6 minutes it's got this thing going on, your build might not get to that same place until like 6:45 or like 7 minutes, even if you feel like you're playing pretty clean and you're like, well, I'm still spending my money though, and everything feels pretty good because there's efficient routes to take. And it's not like a lot of people that think about macro, they also think about it in a sense where they go, well, I spend my money so my macro's good, right? And that's only half the battle of macro. It's also about how fast you generate your money. Because if you have a guy who generates only $50 an hour and he spends all of his money, and you have a guy who generates $100 an hour and he also spends his money, that's 2 different incomes and that's 2 different situations. But they're both spending their money, right? So it's one of those things that's just really important to understand, that you need to maximize how fast you generate as well. And like, for instance, like in this situation, mules is definitely a way to do that for you, because it's going to make your money explode faster.
Way than having a faster natural base.
Yeah, no, because
slightly fast.
Yeah,
it would just be slightly fast.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the reason why mules are so good, this is the reason why you should definitely prioritize the orbital over the command center. It's because mules are numerous, command center is 1, and the faster, like, because you're going to be generating energy the entire game over that main CC, and you can drop mules anywhere on the map that you want. And the second that the faster you can get those mules on the mineral line, the faster your income is going to explode, which is going to be the faster you can allow yourself to do like your barracks explosion and things, like be able to actually afford that while also maintaining SCV and marine production and never missing depots, because you can afford to make them all the time. Like, it's just super important. And then obviously you're still prioritizing your natural command center. You're just doing it right behind the mule, because the mule is more important than making a building.
Another thing that's a lot different, I feel like, is this whole, like you said, put it barracks explosion, where you're building all 4 of your racks all at the same time.
Yep.
Like, I'm so used to, like, oh, I have 150 minerals. Guess I'll slap a barracks in real quick.
The only
barracks number 3 and barracks number 4.
For sure. The only reason why it's a barracks explosion is because up to that point, when you're making, you're getting ready to build all the barracks, what you're doing right before that is you're doing a lot of mineral expenses. You're doing buildings themselves, like you're making depots, you're making SCVs, you're building the gases, you're building the command center, you're building the orbital, you're building all the shit that you're building, right? Like, there's a lot of mineral expenses going on there. But as soon as you actually hit that phase where you start making like your Raven and your Cyclone initially, your Raven and Cyclone take a long time to build, and they're actually not too expensive on minerals, and they're actually substantially expensive on gas. So it actually lopsides your resources for a moment there, where you expend a lot of your gas and your minerals are going up at such a fast pace now, and you can't spend them properly anymore. Like, you hit a moment in the game where your mineral income's going to explode, because you have double mules, you have really well saturated mineral lines at that point, and you just prioritized your production on gas focused units. And then that's when you're like, wow, well, now I have like only 80 gas and I have 500 minerals. What can I do with that? And that's when your build would either go down the road of going for a 3rd command center or going for extra racks, based on if you want to play defensive or aggressive. And you want to play aggressive,
right.
I recommend you play aggressive, so that's why.
And if I scout well enough, if I get enough information, I can decide, well, I don't even need to do barracks, I can expand now.
If you want to take it a macro game, yeah. Here's the thing. If you went into a macro game and you go for a 3rd CC instead, I would say then, just to make yourself feel like you have control with a 3 base setup, then instead of going 5 racks, you could literally go 8 racks.
Oh, really?
Because you can afford more.
If you expand first, if you get a 3rd first, then you might wait and build 8 racks instead of 4.
So More or less. Like you like I wouldn't say you build all of those at once because that's just it's getting to a point that's later.
You might build like an expand and 4 racks, and then 4 more racks when you have.
I would
surplus.
I would say the best way you could do it probably would be you could take your expansion, like you could go 1-1-1 into a third command center, and then you could throw down 2 racks initially right behind it to just get a little bit of production set up right away, and then you don't actually throw down many more racks right away until your third base is already an orbital command, and then you start lifting it off. And as you start lifting it off and sending it to your third base, then you can explode your racks because that's when your economy is going to explode.
I usually do a planetary for my third.
No.
4.
No, don't do that. Don't be that guy. The planetary third base Terrans are Terrans who struggle ever to keep up in a macro game. I'm telling you right now. Yeah, no, it's like a mule is so much money. It is so much minerals that it is about each mule represents about.
You're for third CC supremacy.
Yeah, that's right. The third orbital man. Because think about it like this. Think about it like this. If you're macroing it perfectly, each mule represents about, I would say, like 250 minerals. Okay, we'll just average it off. It's around there. Each mule represents about 250 minerals a minute. And that if you have 3 of them, because you have 3 orbitals, that's 750 minerals a minute that you're getting just bonus. That is a fucking lot of minerals that you can have to use. And
I remember playing when I didn't know anything about, and I was coming in to like, platinum in not Heart of the Swarm, but in what was the expansion before?
Legacy of the Void, Heart of the Swarm, but Wings of Liberty.
No, Wings of Liberty and Wings of Liberty. Playing this one Terran, and it was like half of the whole side of his map was orbital. So it was
no, you can do that late game.
Stacks of orbital commands.
Yeah,
and I remember we mined actually because he wasn't even trying to beat me. He was just like playing Factorio on his side of the map.
Yeah.
And I remember watching the replay, and he just swarmed this base with
like a beehive of mules.
And just mined it out. Just it was gone.
Yep, that's what happens, right? That's something that's much late. It's late game. You can't open games with like 10 orbitals and expect to not die. Like you're fucking die if you do that.
But I was bad enough that he made it work.
No, sure. Like if you don't attack each other, that works. But like that is a legit strategy at high level if you get to late game and like you have control of the map, and then now you start throwing down excess money into like an additional like 8 command centers with mules or something like that. That is viable late game. But early, like you gotta think about it though as well. Where if you think about it like this, okay, this is the crazy part. So I'll get a calculator here so I don't fuck the math up myself. Okay, so let's say you have 1 orbital command done by 2 minutes. So from minute 2 on, we'll also get a notepad out here so I don't mess the timer up because we got to do 3 command centers, right? So your first command center is a orbital command by 2 minutes. Your second CC is an orbital command by probably like 4 minutes, and your third command center, if you go for a fast third CC, could be orbital command by probably like 5, or like we'll say 6 minutes. Okay, just so fuck it, make it easy peasy. 6 minutes, okay? So if you have 250 minerals per rotation each minute of mule, because you get about 1 mule a minute, and each mule mines roughly about 250. So that would mean if let's add it up to about 10 minutes of what you'd be at, okay? So you have 8 rounds of the first command center because you have 8 minutes of that because it starts at 2 and goes to 10. So you have 6 rounds of that based off the second command center because it starts at 4. It finishes at 4 minutes and it goes up to 10. And then finally the third CC finishes at 6 minutes, so you have 4 rounds of it, so it goes up to 10 minutes. So you have 8 minutes plus 6 minutes plus 4 minutes of mule dropping per command center, which is a total of 18 minutes of mule dropping. So you can do 18 times 250, and that would mean you generate 4,500 extra minerals within the first 10 minutes of the game, just because you made triple orbital.
Okay.
That's a lot of minerals. That's like that is just mule income, and go ahead. Sorry.
That's a max roach army.
Exactly right. It's a pretty much like it's a lot of money. It's a fucking lot of money. So. That's why I say What if you just go, well, you know what? I'm gonna go for a or a planetary at my third base. Well, now, just in the first 10 minutes of the game, okay, in the first 10 minutes only, it's now instead of 4,500, now it's only two. Sorry, I did that wrong. 14 times 250 is you lose 1,000 minerals straight up in the first 10 minutes of the game. Because it's now only 3,500 instead of 4,500, just because you didn't want to make a third orbital. And you got to keep in mind, you're going to be pacing at a slower pace every minute beyond that as well, because you're not having a third orbital. So
right, it's compounding problem.
Yeah, it's just a fuckload of minerals that you're going to miss out on. That's why people who go third, I'm telling you right now, any player who's like Masters Plus that looks at a Terran when they're playing against them and they go, oh, you have a planetary third, you have a bad economy. You have really shitty income compared to what you could have. Like, it's not intimidating. Exactly. It's really not intimidating.
Okay. Yeah. I would have, if I was getting a coaching lesson for myself, I think I would have probably waited till I was a higher ranking to.
No, that's totally. I get it, dude. You're gifted this lesson, and I hope you're enjoying it. I hope it's helping you.
Oh, it's really informative. I'm definitely gonna try that build out. Are there other build? So, I'd already do like a Roach Hydra into like lurkers if I'm playing Zerg, and then with Protoss, I've benefited a lot from just getting a ton of gateways. I mean, if you have a ton of gateways, if you can remax on gateway units, I won a game just the other day against somebody that was like trying to work their way into. Basically, it was PvP, and they were trying to make carriers.
Sure.
And I mean, I just was wasting whole 200 armies, just slamming them like that, against him, wave after wave, and he was crushed. So, so those have helped me a lot with, Zerg not so much, just because I struggle when it comes to Zerg with it being too much. Like, obviously, Zerg is the greatest race. If you can steal somebody's, you like their worker with your infestor and totally rebuild a Zerg Terran combination army and destroy your opponent, that's the greatest thing in the world, right?
Yeah, that's super. That's satisfying.
I kind of gave up just because it was just a ton. You throw like my best games as Zerg. It's sad, are when I just straight up don't spread any creep at all, and just like macro normal and just have a fit ton way bigger army than them. But it's just because it's something that would never work against somebody that's actually good.
Yeah, no, you got to manage it the entire game. And I would say the idea you gave yourself a second ago, of going Roach Hydra Lurker and going like gateway heavy, like Stalker Zealot, and maybe add in some like Archon Immortal to that, and those are great styles overall to play with. Like if you want to generalize it versus everybody, those are great styles to play in all matchups with those races.
I've fallen into playing random and watching your stream, watching your Bronze to GM.
They're great. Honestly, they're super good styles. Yeah.
Definitely. What I was getting at is, are there some more nuanced? Like, did you ever watch Pain User back in the day? I remember watching it, and he would have these hour-long games where he just gets totally crushed, right, by Zerg players. But then every 30th game he would play, it would be this 6-hour-long match where the last 2 units on the map was like a infestor and a ultralist versus one cloaked banshee, and they're like cuddling around.
Yeah, I've had games with Pain User that have been really long before myself, back when I was a pro gamer. It was it was just a different era though of the games like that won't exist anymore in StarCraft 2, and the reason why is because they changed the economy.
Well, I was gonna say I won a game recently where I had basically mass marauders, and they base traded with me and had a huge bank, and I just I had no bank at all and just my units, and jumped on their production and killed their their bases quick enough, I guess, that it was just their army versus mine, and I won that game.
Nice.
But are there any like units you can build with Terran where it's just like, you can sit on this army. It don't matter.
Battlecruisers.
You can really weather their
Battlecruisers, honestly. If
Battlecruisers.
you actually, in general with Terran, if you can't win the game and you want to stalemate it out and you want to turn it into a game that's super defensive and you want to make it easy to use as well. Not something that's like, well, you got to be fucking Maru to make this work, or you got to be Klim or some shit.
I understand.
If you actually just make tanks and turrets and like sensor towers, and you make some like PFs at new bases, like you go crazy fucking turtle mode, and then you start making battlecruisers as your main army, and you slowly trade off army that is not BC, and you only really maximize your BC count. If you get to a point where you actually can do things as Terran, for instance, like you could do what we talked about, what you just talked about a second ago with more mules, more orbitals. You can make, if you're playing super turtly and you're like splitting the map with your opponent, throw down like 5 extra command centers, make them all orbital commands, and you can actually start throwing your SCVs away. Like not gas SCVs, but you can throw away your mineral SCVs, and you can just drop your SCV count down all the way to like 25 SCVs, or like 20 SCVs, and just mine gas and just mine minerals with mules. And you can literally make like 180 supply of battlecruisers. And it's if you have that much battlecruiser, like pure battlecruiser, you could every fight, but when it happens, you could scan and throw like 20 Yamato cannons at all of his power units that he has in his army, and you could immediately just like weaken his army and cripple it, and then you just fly to his army, run it over, and then if you really want to take advantage of it even more, you can even teleport onto his army, or you can teleport onto his production, and then just win the game.
That's so brutal.
Yeah, like brutal. If you want to go mass species, that is a super easy to use, super effective army if you can actually mass it.
Do you want to do just a mock game where you mass battle cruisers like this?
So that's gonna take a long time, and we're already at an hour. that game would take like 30 minutes.
We'll do that on the next, whenever we get another lesson.
That sounds good. Yeah, sorry to disappoint you, but yeah, we're already at time. So I was gonna say, just to give you more out of what this is, I'll still break this game down for you though that we're in right now, because we kind of derailed for a little bit there. And I'll just have you no worries. I'll have you just kind of I'll see you what's kind of going on with your build, and just kind of give you more ideas. So like the first thing I saw was your orbital, right, which is like late, and that needs to be fixed for sure. Just because it's a higher priority. And then you keep making SCVs even after, right? And there we go. So a little bit of a late orbital, not too bad though, but still definitely needs to be prioritied. And then your second depot is late as well. So
yes,
make sure you're making your second depot before your gas and before your factory. Because if you don't make your second depot, you're going to make a marine now. Or you should be making a marine now. And then you're going to supply block, and you can't make SCVs. So go ahead, sorry.
I was a little nervous.
Oh, sure. 100, no, I get it, dude. I'm going to tell you right now, I never expect anyone who expects anyone who's like watching this, don't feel embarrassed or anything like that. Everybody would fuck this up because at some point or another, because learning a build that you never do and having the whole build laid in front of you in a matter of like 5 minutes and going, okay, so do that. No one's going to do that perfectly. It takes practice. So yeah, definitely make your second depot like during the time when you make the Reaper even. That way you don't supply block, and then you make reactor. Then you make factory, and you make gas after the factory, just like you made gas after the barracks. So first gas gets made after your racks, second gas gets made after the factory, but it's right after.
It's right after you start the factory?
Yeah. Like so, like right now, you did it pretty well, honestly. It's just you did it like backwards. Like it should have just been factory first, then gas.
Right.
And then as soon as you make the marine out of your racks that ideally you would have made, you immediately make a reactor. So like right now you can already see you have enough gas for a reactor. You would also have had enough time for a marine. So you're just kind of behind by a marine now. And the reason why this is super impactful and super relevant, you're gonna appreciate this at someday. If you leave with your Reaper across the map and your opponent is fucking annoying and they leave their worker that's scouting to harass your SCV building the command center, that marine can guard the SCV building the command center, and it no longer gets harassed. So and also that marine against Zerg can deny the overlord. So it's very fucking useful to make that marine.
So you want to do Reaper, marine, and then
Reactor.
build a reactor.
Yep, 100%.
Okay.
And then behind the factory, immediate starport. And like if we look at your natural too, so like your supply block for such a long time here until the command center was done. That's a bit brutal. So you're gonna start falling really far behind in workers. But like when the natural's done, immediate orbital again. There you go.
Well, I
Perfect,
noticed.
perfect.
Yeah, I did. I noticed late that I had forgotten that.
Depot.
Depot. Yeah, I didn't even build it at the front. I built it at the mineral line because
Sure.
it was so late.
And then make sure
And
too.
then here,
Or go ahead.
the reason I just threw that worker right beside, right there, that's standing in my main. I was about to build another barracks because I'm so used to being like.
Yeah, no,
Slap.
definitely want to wait on
So-
it a little bit, and the reason why is because if you like if you're actually making the units properly all in time, like for instance, your natural hasn't been making any SCVs. It's already in orbital, and there's no SCVs started there. Your barracks hasn't made a single unit besides the Reaper, and it definitely needs to be making more Marines. Like you could probably have 3 Marines out of this barracks already by now, realistically, with the Reaper and the reactor. And then you're making your unit out of the factory, and then your starport is going to finish, and you're going to make a unit out of there pretty soon. But you're going to be tying up your money pretty hard, and you're not going to be able to really afford much if you're actually utilizing your base more. It's just, and you got to realize too, a big reason why your money's built up so hard right now is because you supply blocked and you couldn't keep making SCVs for a while. Like that slows down your cost.
That money in my bank right now, that 440 is 5 SCV.
Yeah, like it's just like the more hiccups you have in your build, the slower everything feels, and that's why I'm saying like spending your money is only half the macro battle. It's also about generation, and right now you've generated slow, which is why your money is getting high. So if you cut corners then to go, okay, well now I'll add in more production to spend my money, it makes your build lopsided because you're adding in more production than you can handle too fast. And then the same thing will happen again where if you make the barracks too fast, you'll have a moment where you're like, well, okay, well now I can't produce out of my racks properly because I don't have enough money to keep it running full time. So now I'll only produce out of them like 75% of the time. And that's what you don't want your build to be up and down with lopsided cycles of macro. You want it to definitely be flowing, and that's why you don't want to explode your costs until you have an explosion of income. So yeah, it's just the lack of making units for a little while there is definitely fucking over.
It's the build getting in its own way.
Yeah. Another thing too to be really careful about is, as we talked about, the priority of your meals being so important, you want to make sure you drop those as well, because you haven't dropped a single meal yet either. So you definitely want to, at the very least, you want to make sure you don't miss a single meal until you move out of your base. Like if you start missing meals a little bit, then that's not as bad, because like it's still obviously good. If perfect macro is perfect macro, right? You can't ever say that's bad, but it's less impactful if you miss a meal here and there once you're attacking, because at that point you also might here and there miss a macro cycle, which again, if the perfect macro is perfect macro, that's always great. But if you're in the middle of attacking and you take a good fight at the cost of forgetting the macro for 10 seconds, then that mule suddenly wasn't as important because you forgot the macro for 10 seconds.
Fight, then you suck because you took macro. But if you take a good fight, then makes up for it.
I mean, but you should always strive to macro regardless, like perfectly every game, no matter what. But yeah, I mean, your build is just losing momentum here because you're not building enough out of your buildings. Like you're already behind by 7 workers at this point, and your army is behind as well because you're not, like, you've made 2 Marines in 4 minutes out of that racks. So that's very, very, very low uptime of your racks. Like if you were to watch the replay and just look at the one building and go, okay, let's watch from 1 minute, like 1 second of the game until whatever with my barracks, like you'll notice a lot of downtime in your racks. And it's things like this that you really need to not do, where you go, okay, well, I'm not going to produce my units out of my existing buildings, and instead I'm going to save my money to build new buildings. You want to make sure you're always building, as priority number 1 is build out of your existing buildings, And then when your money gets high, then you build more out of more buildings. So
Right.
you're building these racks, these 4 extra racks, when you have 4 SCVs on the natural. And you're also ripping off SCVs off the main to do it as well. So you're undersaturated on both mineral lines. I did not build these racks until my natural was at like fucking 12 SCVs. And my main was fully saturated.
Oh, okay. So
That
these are way early.
you're building them way too
it's
early.
because I had the excess minerals, and I thought it wasn't early. I thought it
Yeah,
was on top.
and it's because you weren't macro. It's just because you weren't building SCVs and you weren't building units out of your buildings.
Right. If
you,
I have
yeah.
perfect macro cycles, then I won't have the money to build my racks earlier than they should.
Exactly. If you have perfect macro, you'll feel like you're spending your money up to this point easily, and you'll be like, I barely have. Like I'm always waiting for a little bit more to make a depot, or waiting for a little bit more to make my next SCV or my next marine, because you're pumping constantly. And then once you have like a more than half saturated mineral line where you're ready to start taking your gas explosion on your natural, and then you're also ready to go, okay, well now also I can increase my gas, and also I have more money to increase my barracks count with and my engineering bay. But like you just don't have enough money to do any of this right now, so it's brutal for you. Because it's just going to make your things like your barracks, like look at your barracks and factory, they just sit there doing nothing. And this is what kills you. If you get attacked by someone who's even more aggressive than you, if he's like 1 base owning you, this is how you die. If you're doing a timing to attack someone to break them with 2 base, this is how it fails. Because you're not pumping unit properly. And then like right now, this is when you'd want to swap over your starport with your barracks. So you can go for a swapped over medevac production with Stimpack. And then you make all reactors. Again, but to see that the thing is these reactors, since these barracks are really early, so are these reactors. And now you actually can't make medevacs anymore, and you can't make Stimpack anymore. And that should be before the reactors. Gotcha. So now your racks and your starport will sit here doing nothing again for a while. Yeah. So all you're doing is your build is just having this moment where it's like nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, and then suddenly everything turns on, and then nothing happens, nothing happens. It's just because shit's being unprioritized. And then making sure you don't spy block is huge too, right? That's why I was saying you need to like always have, basically as Terran, you want to have like a depot consistently being made, like almost indefinitely. That's why like you're gonna have to sacrifice an SCV here and there. That's just gonna have to build a depot before you're fully saturated. But once you are fully saturated and you have like two fully saturated mineral lines, you have like 1 or 2 extra SCVs. I would recommend 2 if your macro is not flawless. To just constantly keep building 2 depots at a time whenever you remember to do it. Be like, oh yeah, these 2 extra SCVs, let's make 2 more depots. Make 2 more depots. Make 2 more depots. Because you're going to block repeatedly if you don't constantly build them.
Right.
And yeah, like the supply, like remember how we like the attack we did in the replay I gave you? I think what it was, we were like attacking the base already with like 3 tanks, a Raven, 2 medevacs, and a bunch of Marines at 6 minutes. And right now at 6 minutes you have no medevacs, 1 tank out of 3, and you have some Marines as well. Like you could just have more than what you do right now. So the best thing you can do for yourself too is really mark down like timers of when I do things. Like if you want to copy the build I like identically, and be like, all right, well at 6 minutes Vibe has exactly this amount of units, and that's my quota. I have to hit that, because if I don't hit that, it means I'm under par.
Tell me about what you're doing on the other side of the map. What's this build?
So I'm gonna say right now what I'm gonna preface this with a real answer here, and I'm gonna tell you right now that I did not play as efficient as I could have either, because I wanted to make this more realistic for a diamond game. I did not want to play fucking like, I don't want to have you get to my base and just fucking have something happen and you're like, oh well, this build sucks. So
yeah, I go, well, let's talk about your build.
Yeah. So my build, all my build was I went for a council opener, and then I didn't chrono boost at all, but in a normal traditional sense you should chrono boost it, and then because you want to have faster charge and blink. I went blink first though, and then I was gonna go into Colossus behind it, and that's also totally fine. And then I was gonna go double forge behind it, and behind this entirely, I could go into a third base with a gateway explosion, like kind of what you're doing.
Right. Was that a real Colossus when you attacked me, or was it a?
It was real.
explanation.
The thing about it is everything about what I'm doing here, I'm not going to tell you copy this Protoss build. It's fucking bad.
This isn't the one. Yeah, I can't glean anything from your build.
You're not going to learn anything from my Protoss build because I purposely made it slow, and I made it not make a lot of sense. Like it has a lot of faults in it. Like there could be much more going on here for me if, like, for instance, I could already have a Colossus out now if I wanted to, if I'm going to do a build like this.
Right.
So it's just a bit delayed.
You could have really crushed my 7-minute attack since I had to wait for stim pack.
Yeah, no, well, the thing is, it's just something I say all the time in my series of Beta GM, and it's efficiency beats non-efficiency, and both of our builds are not efficient. So it actually was a real game then, because both of us are in a non-efficient realm of area. But if you played the build that I just showed you, if let's just say you have an eidetic memory and you flawlessly did it exactly the way I just showed you, well then you would have destroyed the build I just showed you with Protoss here.
Sick.
So again, yeah.
Still felt pretty close. I think you did a good job then if you were trying to match my.
Yeah, no, I mean, all I'm doing is I'm like waiting to do things. I'm like not chrono boosting. I like have gateways ready to go and I wait. Like if you go back here, for instance, like it's just this is literally the reason why I feel like I'm experiencing this is because I make Beta GM series as well, so I know how Diamond players play to a good degree. And here's another example, right? Watch your Reaper come into my base. I want you to know that I could have killed this Reaper, and like, this is just an example. But and also I didn't micro the probes much. I just let you kind of kill probes, and I eventually pulled one away and let the Reaper kill probes, and then there was no other probe micro going on here. I never trapped a Reaper. Reaper was killing shit all day, and then my Stalker comes out, and I A move you, and I do not stutter step you. So A move, I stutter step one time, and then I let you run. Right now I should be stutter stepping again during the cooldown of my attack. I do not though. I stand there and I attack, and then I move command to the left as you run away. Right here, right now. Watch my move clicks over here. And I go left, 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 and I'm like, all right, whatever. Like it's purposefully done. Like again, it's making the game more realistic, and it's because again, if you're coaching someone, it has to be somewhat more of a real game, and I don't expect people in Diamond to micro perfectly. Right. They definitely fucking don't. So it's just one of those things where it just creates a more real situation, which is totally fine. And that you know, that same thing goes for my macro, right? Like my macro is not fucking flawless. I don't chrono boost fully every single time throughout the game, and things are just delayed. So that's why I'm saying this build is not a good build to emulate. There's much better versions of Protoss that you could emulate for proper timings.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to your build, it's just things are a little delayed for all the reasons we talked about already. So the best thing you can do for yourself is just save the replay I gave you, and then really use that as a quota for timers. And yeah, like right now, at 7 minutes, this army could be a lot bigger than it is for real. Much bigger. And you have the right idea though. Like you're, and also don't forget too, make sure you make combat shield as soon as you leave your base.
Right. Did I forget that?
You did.
Oh, I totally did.
Yeah, it's okay. And then also when you start combat shield, you can also go to your engineering bay and start armor on 1/1 upgrades.
Okay.
And then behind that, this was not part of the build anymore, but when you start armor, you could also start a second engineering bay and an armory, so you could turn this into 2/2 and then 3/3 upgrades.
That's when getting upgrades is actually useful when you time them properly and then you have them in whatever fight where they don't have that same upgrade.
Yeah, like yeah, of course, yeah, for sure. It's like
I mean, if you're in a real long macro game, then it's really important to have full upgrades. Both sides have full upgrades, but like something like this is what makes it effective to get combat shield first, and then or get stim pack first, and then get combat shield right after when you're leaving.
Well, you just want to go stim pack first because it's a substantially better upgrade than combat shield. Realistically, like it actually increases the mobility and the power of your unit in terms of damage. Combat shield, it just makes your unit take more hits to the face, and if you and then the thing you got to understand is this is the biggest thing to understand. If your build's going to be aggressive, you need to feel like you're more likely to lose the game the longer you take to do something. And this build is aggressive for you. So if your build is supposed to hit the Protoss at 6 or the opponent at 6 minutes, and you don't hit him until 7 minutes and 10 seconds. That's a minute and 10 seconds of extra wasted time that is going to put you into a higher percentage to lose the game.
Right.
So you want to really clean up your timings and make sure everything is like
Well, and
hitting
this
a fast
something like this, if they hold, or I guess if they keep you from basically wiping them off the map, this can go into a macro.
Yes, it can. Yeah, that's why behind this you can take a third base. You started your third base as well before you moved out. And again, I feel like that's just a moment where your money was high because your macro was not as efficient as it should have been.
That's exactly what it was, because I was asking you at the same time. I was like, and what if I expand now as I expand?
Yeah, so because it weakens your timer. And like all these things just make your timer slower.
Right.
So because you can still, that's why also when you start like armor, you start second engineering bay, second armory, or the armory to also make sure you can go to 2/2 upgrades and stuff like that. That's not going to be prioritized before you push. It's going to be something you do after you push while you're parade pushing your opponent, because in case they don't die, you have plan B. But you're still plan A. Your main plan is not, okay, let's macro this. It's aggression play, an aggressive play style. So you're maximizing everything you can to make that as powerful as it can be. If you start preparing for plan B while plan A is not even taking effect yet, it's just going to increase the chances plan A fails.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Who's this handsome young gentleman you have as your decal on your Nexus?
Oh, that's not me. That's not mine. That's a placeholder. I don't know why that exists like this in replays, but that's a guy who works at Blizzard. It's just everybody has that. It's one of the actual like. He's like one of the original 3 guys who made Blizzard with Mike Morheim. He's really old school with the company. He might not be one of the 3, but he's fucking super old school. This guy's been with Blizzard since like 2000 or like 1998 or some shit, or like 1996 or 5 or I don't fucking know. He's old school shit though. Like if you've ever seen the Elite Torn Chieftain WoW band, he's like on that too. Like he's got long hair, and it's like curly long hair. He almost looks like Neuro to a degree. He's like a stockier version of Neuro. But yeah, I've never met him, but he seems like a cool guy. I don't even know if he works at Blizzard anymore, to be honest, nowadays. But yeah.
Oh, he's still honored here. We see that.
Yeah. Yep. But anyways, dude. Any final questions about anything before we wrap up here with the playstyle and how it goes?
Yes, I'm definitely looking forward to implementing this build when I have Terran matchups. I definitely like this style build where you're doing like a parade push with on 2 bases, and like you said, making your opponent kind of respond.
Yep.
You know,
the more efficient your build is, the more they have to go in that realm. The more they have to respond to your game that you're making them play because your build's super efficient.
Exactly. You know, and yeah, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. And dude, thanks for doing a lesson. And shout out to Jadicus for gifting you the lesson as well.
Yeah, well, gee.
And dude, have a good rest of your day. And in Discord, on this same channel we're talking in right now in Discord, or the private call, I'll send you a link to a VOD by tomorrow probably. That'll just be literally what we just talked about. So you can always watch it over again and listen to it again if you want to.
Well, we appreciate it, man.
All right.
And we're huge fans. We love what you do. Thank you for the bronze to GMs.
Thanks, man.
There was this one video where you said you were explaining something, and you said, but this comes from knowledge.
This is knowledge. Yeah, that's right, dude.
Yeah, I always meme that when you'll be like spitting some facts, I'll look at Josh and I'll be like, and this comes from knowledge.
Exactly.
Fuck
yeah, dude. Gotta have that brain power. You gotta know what you're doing. Nice, dude.
All right. We appreciate you.
Nice. Thank you, dude. Have a good day, man.
You too.
All right. See ya.
All right. Bye.
All right, guys. That was a coaching lesson with our boy, Mr. Clocks, Mr. Colossi. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this helped you out and it was informative for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you guys in the next video, whatever that might be, whatever you decide to click on YouTube and stuff like that. And then people on Twitch, I'll talk to you in 2 seconds. But until next time, guys, good luck in your own games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Peace.